You're listening to WBTNY Bodytalk New York Radio. Coming up on the hour, special guest Karen Atkins shares with us a new breakthrough in healing, Body Talk. Your body has the ability to heal itself. Stay tuned to find out how.
Feels so good, takes my world so nice, makes me run all
Hello everyone,
night.
and welcome to WBTNY's Nurture New York. I'm Steve Cassano, and I'm here with Karen Atkins, certified Body Talk instructor and practitioner and licensed massage therapist. Karen is here today to introduce us to a revolutionary system of healing called Body Talk. So Karen, tell us, what is Body Talk?
Body Talk it's a complete healthcare system that works with the body's innate ability to heal itself. A Body Talk practitioner utilizes a subtle form of biofeedback to find areas in the body where stress has caused communication to become compromised, which results in discomfort and illness. So by rewiring these communication circuits, the body is then able to reestablish the functions that had been compromised so it can continue to heal itself in the way nature actually intended.
That sounds really interesting, Karen. Can you tell us, how did you get involved with Body Talk?
Well, I actually never had any intention to become a healthcare practitioner. And in fact, I found Body Talk when I was working as a landscape designer, happily working with the trees. And a friend of mine, who is a very successful doctor of acupuncture in Hawaii, started talking to me about the system. I had met him about 10 years before that when I went on vacation in Hawaii, and he gave me the best shiatsu massage I'd ever had in my life. My health was fairly poor for a number of years on various levels. I had 10 years of severe and chronic back pain that used to wake me up in the middle of the night. My back and my shoulder and my elbow were just continually tight, and I had to constantly be going to massage therapists and acupuncturists and chiropractors and everything else to try to work that out. And had some digestive issues and menstrual problems, and also a host of different types of emotional and anxiety-related issues. And I had gotten some results with some alternative healthcare, particularly acupuncture and massage, but I still felt that my health was fairly vulnerable, and that when my stress level increased, my health would decrease. And my back pain would increase, and my digestive problems would get worse. And I was really sick of it. And my friend Kaimi, Dr. Pilipovich, started talking to me about Body Talk. And in fact, what happened with him is that he had become a doctor of acupuncture. He had been studying it for many, many years and was using his knowledge of acupuncture and Chinese medicine in all of the different types of healthcare that he was providing for his patients and his clients. And he moved from California to Hawaii, and he finally got his license in Hawaii. And I called him up a couple of months after he got his license, and I said, "So how's your acupuncture practice going?" And he said, "Actually, I'm not really doing much acupuncture anymore." And so I said, "Well, why not? You just got your doctorate in acupuncture. What do you mean you're not practicing anymore?" And he said, "Well, I found that if you ask the body if it wants needles poked in it, it usually says no. And in fact, if you ask it if it wants nasty tasting herbs, sometimes it says no to that too." And so I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And he said, "Well, the Body Talk system is the system that I just learned. And what we do in Body Talk is we're actually asking the body what it needs instead of assuming that we know through our very limited perspective and education."
So that must have piqued your curiosity.
It did. It absolutely did. And in fact, I wanted him to give me a session. And unfortunately, he was still living in Hawaii, and I was living in New York. So I didn't get a chance to work with him until about a year and a half later. And he had been talking to me about it and explaining it to me. And I thought it sounded interesting, although to be very honest, I also thought it was a little hard to believe the things that he was telling me, because what he was saying was that people were healing from all sorts of ailments, from headaches to back pain to cancer and multiple sclerosis and lots of things in between, from often not too many sessions, and from a procedure that involved an ancient hatha yoga healing technique of gently tapping on the head and then also tapping on the heart. And I thought that that sounded interesting, but a little bit hard to believe that something so simple could actually be so effective. But finally, when he actually ended up becoming an instructor of the system, and he flew out to the East Coast to teach a class, and I met up with him and received a session from him. I think that pretty much hooked me, even that first session, because the first thing that I experienced was I felt like I was breathing for the first time in my life. I thought I was breathing. I was actually a singer many years ago, and I thought I knew how to breathe. But apparently I hadn't.
So what did Kaimi do?
He balanced a little joint in my skull called the spheno-basilar juncture, and in Body Talk we call it SB for short. What that joint is, it's a little joint inside the skull that actually rocks ever so slightly while we're breathing. But that rocking motion is so crucial because it actually allows the breath to be full. Any type of healthcare system from Western to Eastern talks about the importance of breath. So we all know that breathing is important. But what we also may not know is that the brain actually uses the breath to scan all the frequencies of the body in order to see what's wrong and then be able to fix it. And as you know, the brain needs to be involved in healing on all levels in the body. So if that joint is stuck, then the brain's ability to scan all the frequencies of the body, see what's wrong, and then fix it is going to be impeded. And that could affect any area of the body. So simply just getting that joint to free up can have tremendous physical, emotional, and all sorts of other health benefits for somebody. And then another point that is also very important to mention about that joint is that the sphenoid bone, which is part of that joint, actually houses the pituitary gland, which is the master endocrine gland of the entire endocrine system. And when the joint moves freely, that pituitary gland gets a little bit of a massage. And that massage allows it to work and function well and secrete all the hormones that then tell all of the other endocrine glands to produce their hormones. And so the entire endocrine system is actually reliant upon the pituitary gland to get its daily massage, or it's actually every time we breathe massage. If that's not happening, that could potentially impede all sorts of hormonal responses in the body. And that could cause digestive problems, that could cause insomnia, that could cause anxiety-related issues, menstrual problems, immune system problems, metabolism problems. I mean, all sorts of things can occur simply because that pituitary gland is not functioning at full capacity. And that often occurs because that joint gets stuck. And in fact, I'd say it'd be pretty safe to say at least 90% of our population has that joint stuck on some level. And it may not be completely stuck because we wouldn't be living in that case because we wouldn't be able to breathe. But a lot of us have it stuck on some level, and mine apparently was pretty stuck because after Kaimi balanced that joint within me, it freed up my breathing so much I felt like I was breathing for the first time in my life. And it was very profound. And my health on all sorts of levels started to shift after that. The digestive problems that I'd had cleared up almost immediately, and they'd been chronic problems for many, many years. Menstrual problems that I'd had started to clear up after a few months. The back pain that I had went away in just a few sessions, actually. And all sorts of other emotional-related, anxiety-related issues just dropped to a tremendous degree. It was very, very impressive to me. And so I decided that I just needed to find out as much as I could about this system. And I went and took a class, actually flew out to California and took the class. And the information that I received in the class and the healing and the experience that I had there was even more profound. And it led me to basically find everyone that I could get my hands on when I came back home and say, listen, you need to try this Body Talk thing. It's really, really cool. And what happened was everyone that I worked with really enjoyed it so much that I ended up starting a practice out of that. And I left landscape design because I was so fascinated by the results that I was getting and the healing that was occurring for myself and also for my clients that I just wanted to keep doing it.
So you've explained to us what Body Talk is, and you've told us how you've gotten started. So what is the theory behind Body Talk? How does it work?
There's three basic premises behind the Bodytalk system. And the first one is that the body is designed to heal itself. And it is constantly healing itself all the time. There's actually 200 billion processes that are going on in the body in any given moment. And all of those processes involve a communication system. So if you cut yourself, you start to bleed, your body knows how to heal that cut, and you don't have to think about all the different things that need to go on in order for that cut to heal. The second premise of Bodytalk is that everybody has an innate wisdom, and this innate wisdom allows the body to be communicating on all levels, and it's kind of guiding all of the functions of the body. It guides the individual parts and the synchronization that is necessary for the communication. And what the Bodytalk practitioner does is we are communicating with that innate wisdom of the person through a form of biofeedback, which is a very subtle form of muscle testing that's somewhat similar to kinesiology if you've ever experienced that, but with some important differences. And we're getting answers from the body about where the areas are where the communication systems have broken down. And then through an ancient Hatha Yoga healing technique, we're actually rewiring that communication so that the body can go back to doing the healing that it was doing before. And the third premise is that communication is the key to healing. And the idea behind that is each individual part can be functioning at full capacity. For example, you could have the gallbladder. The gallbladder is an organ that its job is to squirt bile into the small intestine in order to digest fats. So we could get the gallbladder functioning really perfectly. It's always squirting its bile, it's doing a great job. But what happens if it's not communicating with the stomach, which is working on the French fries that the person ate for lunch, and the French fries are getting thrown into the small intestine to be digested? If the gallbladder doesn't get the message, the communication from the stomach that, hey, here comes the French fries, better squirt that bile, and it's not squirting at the right time, then that food doesn't get digested. So just because the gallbladder is working and the stomach is working, if they're not talking and communicating, then the food isn't going to be digested. And that happens on all levels in the body. So we need to make sure that communication is happening. And with Bodytalk, that's what we're asking. Who needs to talk to whom? So just to summarize, the body is always healing itself. Stress is going to come in to break that communication. The Bodytalk practitioner is finding out where are those weak links in communication, those broken circuits, if you will. And then through this ancient Hatha Yoga healing technique, we're going to be rewiring that communication so the systems are communicating again and the body starts to heal itself. And that's the gist of the system, and one of the things that make it so unique and that make it also non-invasive. We don't actually have to do anything. We just have to actually remind the body. It's really creating some type of awareness in the body of where the communication is broken down, and then reminding the brain to initiate this healing process or this communication process in the body and wherever the body indicated it needed it. So in the case of the liver and the pancreas, there's a communication breakdown. The brain is going to say to the liver and the pancreas, listen guys, you have to shake hands and make up because you need to be communicating in order for sugar metabolism to work and in order for the rest of the body to be happy. So can you please do that? And then they go, okay, we'll shake hands and make up. And then the healing starts to occur. So we're tapping on the head to initiate that balancing process, we call it. And then we tap on the heart. And that saves the information in the body because the heart actually functions as the body's memory. When you tell somebody...
Really?
Yeah. When you tell somebody to learn something, to memorize it, you tell them to learn it by what? By heart. Mm-hmm. Right? Not by head, even though you think that you're learning with your brain. But no. When you've really memorized something, there's a reason why we say, learn it by heart. And actually, there have been Western studies of the electrical impulses of the heartbeat. There's an organization called the HeartMath Institute. They're based in Colorado. And they've done research with the electrical impulses of the heartbeat, and they found that each electrical impulse actually contains numerous electrical impulses and then smaller electrical impulses, and there are almost infinite number of electrical impulses within each individual heartbeat. And those impulses are actually sending messages to every single cell in the body, telling each cell what type of cell to be. Hey, listen, you're a liver cell. Don't forget, you have to do what the liver cells do and not what the spleen cells do. That won't be effective.
Wow.
And so while that's occurring, the heart is saying, remember, this is what you're doing. So when in body talk, when we tap on the head and we say, yo, brain, get these guys to recommunicate, the brain does its job and they start connecting again. Then we tap on the heart and we say, remind those two that they need to keep talking and the reasons why. And so the heart goes, okay, guys, remember, you need to keep communicating. This is what you're doing. And you got to keep that going for us to be healthy. And that's the process of how body talk works.
Wow, there's a lot going on here. That's really fascinating. So was there one particular person who developed this system? Where did it come from?
Body Talk was founded in the mid-90s by a gentleman named Dr. John Veltheim, who is an acupuncturist from Brisbane, Australia. And he was very famous. He had a clinic there where he would see 200 patients a day. And people would come from all over the world to see him. And not only did he practice acupuncture, he actually was a doctor and a practitioner of many different forms of healthcare, Western, Eastern, everything in between. He was an osteopath. He was a chiropractor, a Reiki master. He taught applied kinesiology. And he also studied different types of philosophy, yoga philosophy, and bioenergetic psychology. He actually started healthcare pretty much at the age of 8. He was doing martial arts and meditation. So he was really on a mission to find all the different cures that could exist for us human beings. And he just studied and learned all these different systems and was very, very successful. But one day he actually found himself pretty ill because he had actually worked himself too hard. He had contracted Epstein-Barr virus. And what happened was he had 101 fever for about 3 years that he couldn't get rid of. And all of the things that he had learned weren't working. And not only those things, but he went to faith healers and all sorts of other things, and nothing actually helped his fever, and he was very ill. And then he ran into a colleague of his from New Zealand. She had been studying some advances in applied kinesiology. And she said, listen, I've learned this very simple technique that's supposed to work really well with viruses and ADD and a couple of other random things. And she said, but I think it'll help. Why don't we try it? So he said, all right. And after a couple of sessions, his fever finally broke. In fact, it actually spiked up a little bit because, as you know, that means the immune system is actually kicking in, which is what it wasn't doing for all those years. And then finally it went down to normal, 98.6 normal, not 101 normal, which he had had for 3 years. And so he was absolutely fascinated that he couldn't figure out how to solve his health problem, but this very simple technique that his friend had used saved his life, basically. And so he talked to her about it, and she said, why don't you put this together into something that's even more sophisticated than just this technique? And so he did some more research and started to develop an entire system behind this one technique using all of the knowledge that he had gained from 20 or 30 years of experience in healthcare. And the system, as it developed, started to become more based on priorities in the body in terms of communication than problems. And that's one of the key and important aspects of body talk, is that we're looking for not just what needs to communicate, but what is the most important thing to communicate in any given moment. And then we do that in the order in which the body asked for it. And so he used all of his knowledge and developed a very sophisticated protocol chart of questions to find out what these priorities are and where in the body communication need to happen and in what order. So he decided that he was going to do a little more research on this to see how he could maybe incorporate it into what he did, or perhaps even develop it further, because it was really just a technique at the time. And so he actually did some studies with EEGs to determine what was happening, because the idea here is that we were getting parts of the body to communicate. And so he wanted to find out what was happening with this communication and what was happening in the brain. So he hooked up the brain to electrodes, and he said, all right, let's tap on the brain and see what happens, just without doing anything. So tap on the brain, tap, tap, tap. Nothing's really happening. The machine is kind of blipping. Okay, somebody's tapping on me. Great. And then he said, all right, well, let's just hold two parts of the body. Maybe the person has a stomach ache. Let's hold their stomach and, their head. Okay. Tap on the head. Tap, tap, tap. Nothing really happens. But then when he asked the body, okay, what now do you need to have communicating? What's the priority here that we need to have communication occurring in? And let's say it was the liver and the spleen. Then he held those two parts and tapped on the head, and all of a sudden the equipment started jumping up and down like crazy because the brain was responding to the information that, hey, these two guys aren't talking and they need to start communicating. And then the activity in the body started to increase.
So the assumption is that the body knows basically what's wrong with itself.
That's right.
Or parts of the body know.
That's right. It's the innate wisdom that we're communicating with through that biofeedback. That's the overseer of all of these functions, and that's the part of us or the connection that we have that's able to see these areas in the body where there are miscommunications, and that's what we're asking, and that's where we get the information, and then from there we remind the brain and then therefore the rest of the body. So after this experience, he decided to do a lot more research, and eventually he developed an entire system around this very simple technique based on all of his experience in Western and Eastern medicine for 20 or 30 years. And he developed a very sophisticated but simple protocol chart of questions that allows Bodytalk practitioners to determine what areas of the body need to be communicating, and then a very simple way of balancing these areas of communication so that their bodies can do their own healing. And that's how the Bodytalk system got its foundation. So another thing that I want to mention about healing in general is that the human body has two aspects of its nervous system. It has the sympathetic and the parasympathetic components. So the sympathetic aspect of the nervous system is the fight or flight. And the parasympathetic is the relaxation or rest. And the important thing to note is that you could rename those two aspects. Sympathetic could be renamed as protection and armoring, and parasympathetic could be renamed as healing and growth. And it's important to remember that we cannot actually have the parasympathetic and the sympathetic functioning at the same time. When one of them is functioning, the other one is at rest and vice versa. So if you take that into our renaming and we say, okay, therefore, if we are protecting and armoring, we cannot be in a process of healing and growth. And it's really important for us to remember that when we're thinking about healthcare. And Bodytalk in general takes that concept as its main focus and is constantly working to reduce stress in a person, balance out the stress levels, and balance out the protection and armoring aspects so that healing and growth can start to occur.
That makes a whole lot of sense because you're hearing more and more from so many sources how much stress actually impacts a person's health. So what about Bodytalk makes it different from other alternative healthcare systems?
One thing that makes Bodytalk a unique healthcare system is the concept that we're looking for priorities instead of problems. A lot of healthcare systems are based on the search for problems in the body. We got to find out what's wrong, and then we got to go fix it. But the problem with that is, let's say, for example, that we're asking the body, where's there a problem? So if I asked my body or anybody's body, is the liver a problem? Everybody's body is going to say, yeah, it's a problem. Because let's face it, We live in a very toxic society, and everybody's liver is a problem because the liver is working to help us detox. And so it's getting clogged by all the toxins in our environment. So everybody's liver is a problem. But it's important to know that not everybody's liver is going to be the priority. Because, for example, let's say you go to a homeopath and the homeopath says, oh my goodness, your liver is so toxic. Before we do anything else, we have to detox your liver. But what happens if the person has very weak kidneys? The kidneys actually need to filter the blood that is the result of the liver dumping toxic bile into the body. All those toxins that get thrown into the body from the liver detoxing need to eventually be filtered through the kidneys. If the kidneys are not strong enough to withstand that toxic load that's being placed on them, the person could go into kidney failure. So if we don't know the order that the body needs to address the problems and the issues, we could be, well, in Body Talk we can't because we're actually not invading the body. But in other healthcare systems, sometimes harm can be done because the prescriptions and procedures that are being done in many healthcare systems sometimes are out of order for the body. And that could eventually cause a healing crisis or perhaps some more substantial problems. With Body Talk, we're not going for the problem because the problem area may need to be solved after 4 or 5 other communication issues are addressed. And then we might not even have to address the problem area because it could be that the liver is very toxic simply because the kidneys aren't filtering properly, and then perhaps the brain isn't talking to itself, so it can't even see what's going on in the kidneys. Maybe we need to balance those two things, and maybe an emotional issue that the person is having. And after we've done that, all of a sudden, the liver actually is fine, and it starts to do its own detoxing very naturally.
So when you're practicing Body Talk, actually you're asking the body, what do you need to tell me? Is that right?
That's right. As a Body Talk practitioner, we're asking the body, what's the most important thing that needs to communicate? What's the priority right now? And then after we find that, let's say it's the heart needs to talk to the lungs. Then we get those two organs talking to each other, and then we say, okay, what's next, body? Now who needs to talk to whom? And then we address that. And so we're constantly asking the body, once we've reconnected the communication lines between certain different parts of the body, we go on to the next thing and the next thing. So we're asking the body the order that it needs, because everybody's body is unique. And each person needs to have different areas addressed at different times. Maybe I have a problem with my ex-boyfriend, and that emotion is so charged in me that if I don't balance my relationship to that emotion first before I get to the cold that I'm having, then actually I could take medicine for my cold, but the emotion is still stuck in my body. And so we might need to address that first before we address some other thing that's going on. So everybody's situation and experience is so different that with Body Talk, we need to ask each individual person's body, what do you need right now? And not necessarily our idea of what we think the person needs based on our education and experience, but not the wisdom of the body, which is what we need to address.
There's also a lot of talk nowadays about the fact that in Western medicine, more attention is paid to the symptom rather than the cause. It sounds to me as if the Body Talk system tends to address the cause.
It does address more of the underlying causes, absolutely. And in fact, it's very important not to just address the symptom because 90% of the time, maybe even more than that, a symptom is occurring simply as a communication, actually. Our body's communicating with us all the time. The problem is we just don't know how to listen to it. Mm-hmm. With the Body Talk system, we're actually learning how to listen to the body. But our body's actually giving us lots of messages. Sometimes if we get a headache, it's not that our head is a problem. It's that there's some other stuff that's going on that we need to address, and then the headache goes away. The headache is just a message from the body saying, hey, pay attention to me. Something's wrong. And so when we get that headache, now that I've learned the Body Talk system, when I get the headache, I don't say, what's wrong with my head? I say, let me ask my body what it needs.
So instead of taking a pill and basically telling the headache to go away. You're really asking the body what's wrong, what's contributing to this headache.
Yeah, it's the difference between suppressive medicine and expressive, right? We're getting the body to express itself because, you were probably always told if you don't express your emotions, then, you're going to get bottled up inside, right? Well, it's the same thing with the body. If it doesn't get to express itself, and we keep throwing pills and all sorts of drugs and things to suppress our symptoms, eventually it's going to explode.
Karen, I've noticed that throughout our conversation, you've mentioned many different disciplines. You've mentioned Chinese medicine, philosophy, psychology, acupuncture, anatomy, and physiology. It seems to me that Body Talk seems to be a melding of many different disciplines. Is this true?
That's correct, and that's mostly due to the fact that Dr. Veltheim, who developed the system, studied and actually taught so many of those different aspects of healthcare. He studied psychology and philosophy and Western physiology and neuroanatomy and physiology and Chinese medicine and all sorts of different energy systems. And he put that all together into the Bodytalk system to make it extremely vast and also flexible, because one of the things that I think is very unique about the Bodytalk system is that there's also a whole entire section in Bodytalk open for other modalities. So if you're a practitioner and you practice, let's say, massage therapy or acupuncture or chiropractic, you can actually determine within your Bodytalk session if the person needs some aspect of that modality that you use along with the Bodytalk session or in place of it for the moment, or to help you determine specifically things that are needed. I know many practitioners that utilize Bodytalk to help them figure out what's the order that the person needs to be adjusted if they're getting a chiropractic adjustment. Or, okay, I have 3 different homeopathic remedies that I'm thinking are going to be good for this person, and Bodytalk can help determine which one would be ideal at that moment.
It makes a lot of sense when you think about it. Whereas many disciplines are practiced to the exclusion of others, that all these modalities are being pulled together because they're really not mutually exclusive. They do work together. I mean, they all have merit.
That's right. Bodytalk is a complete healthcare system, and it gets tremendous results for people. But let's face it, there's a lot of different wonderful healthcare systems out there and healthcare modalities. And wouldn't it be nice if we had all of them at our disposal to be able to pick and choose when the particular person's body needs that specific type of healing?
Karen, this sounds very, very exciting, and it sounds like something that everyone should learn about. Can you tell me, how can I get involved with Bodytalk?
There's several different ways to get involved in Bodytalk. One simple way is to receive Bodytalk sessions. And there's thousands of practitioners throughout the world who are certified in Bodytalk. And on my website, www.learnbodytalk.com, as well as the International Bodytalk Association website, www.bodytalksystem.com, there are listings of practitioners in all sorts of areas throughout the world. There's actually practitioners in over 27 countries, and classes are being taught in over 18 countries. So there's constantly new areas that are opening up where there'll be practitioners as well. So if somebody wanted to receive a Bodytalk session, learnbodytalk.com or bodytalksystem.com would be the place to go to find a practitioner. One can also actually learn how to practice Bodytalk, which doesn't mean they have to become an official certified practitioner, because one can practice Bodytalk on themselves or their friends and family and not need to be certified. But many people decide that they'd like to actually become certified practitioners. And the classes that are offered there, the foundational class for Bodytalk, we call it Modules 1 and 2, which is a 4.5-day course. And that class teaches people how to learn to determine the specific areas of compromised communication that we've been discussing and how to address these areas to allow the body to heal itself. So it's a complete system that we're teaching people. There are advanced classes that can be taken on top of that, but to become certified, Modules 1 and 2 are the only class that is required for certification.
So let me get this straight. In order to become a Body Talk practitioner, I would be required to take modules 1 and 2. Let's say I'm not quite ready to become certified, but I do want to learn Body Talk for my own personal application and health. Are there any other options available to me to learn Body Talk?
Yes, there are. We've begun teaching a class called Bodytalk Access, which is a 6-hour class that's available to anybody. It could be a practitioner or a layperson, anyone who wants to learn some basic body talk techniques but may not have the time or the interest in learning the entire system. And this class teaches techniques that have been already used by thousands of people all over the world to address issues such as flus, colds, digestive problems, depression, attention deficit disorder, learning disorders, menstrual problems, insomnia, all sorts of stress and anxiety, and even those microbe invasions, physical traumas, musculoskeletal issues. So just these 5 techniques that are taught in this class actually help to address, with repetition, all sorts of healthcare issues that are common daily experiences for people. And so without having to learn how to address all this very specific issues that are going on with the person, they're very broad and general techniques that can be done on a weekly basis to help maintain a very high level of health for the individual. And we also teach a combination of these 5 techniques that can be used as a first aid measure in emergency situations as well. So it can be a very powerful tool for that.
Are these techniques something I can perform on myself, or are they performed typically on someone else?
Both, actually. These techniques can be performed on oneself as well as anyone else, friends, family, children, people in hospitals. All sorts of people can learn this. Any healthcare professional can add these techniques to whatever system they're using. Even doctors and nurses, particularly doctors and nurses, can help people recover from surgery or prepare for surgery, can help people recover from any sort of illness that they're having, simple illnesses and complex illnesses as well.
Sounds very interesting.
Yeah, I'm very excited about this class, actually, because we've been trying to develop a simple class for a number of years that take the quintessential components of the body talk system that are very effective, but don't require the sophistication of learning the entire system, which, although it's fairly easy to learn, it's a 4.5-day course as opposed to this course, which is just 6 hours. And these techniques can be performed in 10 minutes on a person. And we've already done a pilot program in a school in Chicago with children between, I think, 8 and 11. And these kids have seen improvement in their level of efficiency in school, their ability to be able to concentrate. Certain children had had some physical dysfunction, which improved drastically or dramatically. And the teachers have noticed a substantial improvement in the children's ability to comprehend the courses that they're taking.
So this can be seen as an ongoing program for health maintenance.
Yes. So any type of health care that you're already receiving, whether it's body talk or not, these 5 techniques can be used to keep the person healthy and to keep them maintaining a higher level of health all the time.
I think that this is something valuable that everyone should learn.
Yeah, I think so. We've already seen, aside from just the pilot program, we've been starting to teach this class, and I've been getting a barrage of emails and phone calls from people who are really excited about the results they've used simply just with one of these techniques that we teach. The International Body Talk Association hopes to use this class to provide a basic level of health maintenance in communities and countries, even around the world, where good basic health care might not be available. So it's not just a matter of maintaining health for those of us who have insurance and can go to see doctors if we want to, but also people who really don't have that ability and need some form of inexpensive health maintenance that they can use on themselves and their friends and family to ensure that they're going to be healthy.
Well, thank you, Karen. Thank you for sharing some of the many benefits of Body Talk with me and all of our listeners today.
Thank you, Steve.
This concludes our interview with Karen Atkins, Certified Body Talk Instructor. For more information, visit www.learnbodytalk.com. I'm Steve Cassano, and on behalf of WBTNY, thank you for listening and have a healthy day.
It's all right, and I love to climb 1,000 places, see what's good, makes me see sunlight, hide no more in flight, cry again for happiness, I'd love to see what's inside, it's so simple, so